Today we are starting with CNS, and in the first of these we will start with the various agents which are used in management of pain. So this lecture will be covered in two parts, that is opioid analgesics and introduction to pain. So the first part is today, and tomorrow we will start with this. We will continue with the second part of this particular lecture. So basically we will be covering these much portions in these 2 days, like definitions which are related with pain and pain receptors, pain mechanisms, then various types of pain relieving agent and perception mechanisms, then opioid analgesics, their historical aspects, then endogenous opioids, opioid receptors, classification of opioids and related drugs, pharmacokinetic of these opioid analgesics, their pharmacological actions. This will be covered today in part 1. So as we all know, that pain is the most common symptom for which patients see a doctor. Different types of drugs are used for treatment of pain. In general, broadly we can classify them into these classes. First, the drugs that relieve pain due to multiple causes, and they are called analgesics agent. That means their primary action is relief of pain. Like in this category, there are two classes, major classes of drug. One is narcotic analgesics, that means opium and opioid related compounds, and another category is non-narcotic analgesics, like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agent, paracetamol and other. And first category, narcotic analgesics, they act mainly through central nervous system. And second category, which is non-narcotic, they are mainly acting through peripheral nervous system. In second class, there are drugs that relieve pain due to single cause or some specific pain syndrome only. They are not classified as analgesics because they are effective via other mechanisms and effective in only single condition. Like to relieve my pain of migraine, we use sumatriptan, which act by 5-HT receptors. Like for various neuralgias, pain originating from nerves, we have carbamazepine, glyceryl trinitrate, which is a vasodilator. It has been used to relieve pain of angina pectoris, which is due to imbalance between oxygen supply and oxygen demand in myocardium. Then like butyl scopolamine, which is being used as antispasmodic to relieve spasm of visceral smooth muscle. Then baclofen, it can be used in some condition because it relieves spasm of striated muscle, and various other agents also. Then third category of drug, which is also used in treatment of pain or management of pain, it is adjuvant agents. That means the pain is not a single symptom. It consists of various other things, like one is pain reaction and then suffering mechanisms which are related with acute or chronic mechanisms. And because of this, there are other agents which are used in addition to the various primary analgesic agents, like anxiolytics, neuroleptics, that means antipsychotics, then antidepressants. They may modify the perception of pain and remove the concomitants of pain, such as anxiety, fear, depression. Sometimes placebo can also get relief from pain in 3% of cases. Next category, anesthetic agents. You must know that general and local anesthesia. Why we use anesthesia during operations, large or small ones? Because we want to avoid the pain sensation or the reflexes because of pain sensations during procedures. So they are also one of the pain removing agents. So here are some definitions. In the whole pain portions, we will have various definitions or various terms. It is better to clear them beforehand. Like, what do you mean by nociception? Nociception is a consequence of tissue injury. Tissue injury may be because of trauma, maybe because of inflammation. It causes the release of chemical mediators like acetylcholine, prostaglandin, noradrenaline, 5-hydroxytryptamine, glutamine, bradykinin, endogenous opioid system, and adenosine. So they have neuronal or non-neuronal origins. These mediators activate nociceptors. So nociception is the consequence of stimulation of nociceptors. So what are the nociceptors? Nociceptors are pain receptors. Nociceptors transmit information by two types of fiber. One is A delta, second type is type C. These A delta fibers are myelinated and C fibers are non-myelinated. They carry impulses to the spinal cord and brain. They carry pain impulses to the spinal cord and brain. Pain perception. It's a very complex mechanism. It is due to nociceptive impulses reaching the brain. Which part of the brain? Thalamus, cortex, plus impulses from other peripheral receptors like heat and mechanoreceptors. Whose threshold can be decreased by same chemical mediators. Okay? Mechanoreceptors, heat receptors, and their threshold can be decreased. That means they will start sending impulses even in the lower thresholds. So these are processed in the brain. These informations, they then processed in the brain whence modulated inhibitory impulses pass down to regulate the continuing afferent inputs. So they are processed and they are the modulated impulses. They also modulate these afferent impulses. But pain can occur without nociception also. How? Like some neuralgias, there are no stimulus. But the pain because of stimulation of even some nerve tumor or some nerve compression or something. So in neuralgias, there is no nociception is involved. But so pain is a psychological state, although most of the time pain have a physical cause, but it's a psychological state of the mind. Sometimes it could be without any pain or physical stimulus. So there are various types of pain, like acute pain. That means it can be defined as like less than 3 months of duration. It transmitted principally by fast conducting myelinated A delta fibers. That means acute pain, less than 3 months duration, conducted by A delta fibers. It has major nociceptive input like physical trauma, pleurisy, or myocardial infarction, perforation of ulcer, these type Then the narcotics, opioid like drugs, and sometimes non-narcotic also, they can be used in treatment of acute pain. But mostly for acute pain, we will use narcotic analgesics. What do you mean by narcotics? Let's see. Chronic pain. Chronic pain, it is then when duration of pain is more than 3 months. Here, slow conducting nerve fibers, type C fibers, which are non-myelinated, they are involved. It is better regarded as a syndrome because when it becomes chronic, it is not only pain sensation. There are other signs and symptoms which are associated with this. Like it is depressing because patient sees that I have no prospect of getting cured. Then analgesics alone here are often insufficient. And adjuvant drugs they are helpful in this situation like antidepressants or neuroleptics as well as sometimes non-drug therapy including psychotherapy. They are having more importance in this situation, this type of situation. Chronic pain is still very important. Neuropathic pain, it follows damage to the nervous system. That is acute pain without nociception. That means there is no afferent input. Some neuralgias, in some neuralgias, it is less susceptible to analgesics. The suitable drugs are some antidepressant and carbamazepine. And transient carbamazepine is primarily, it's an anti-epileptic agent which acts by blocking sodium channels. Transient pain is produced by activation of nociceptors in the skin and other tissues like absence of tissue damage. So this is transient pain can be provoked. It protects. What is transient pain? Whenever we go near to fire, we immediately, whenever we feel heat or whenever we feel some fire, we will immediately remove our hand. And this is the transient pain. Because transient pain protect ourselves for any type of injury. So it sends the environmental or excessive stressing in the tissue and give the protective responses. And it is part of normal life and it doesn't need any treatment. So now we will start with opioid analgesics and part 1 of it will be covered today. So historical aspects of opioid analgesics. Opioids have a very old ancient history. Some has observed that morphine caused cerebral depression and relieved toothache. And the Gay Lussac named this drug, which was the first discovered alkaloid after the Morpheus, the son of Somnus. That is morphine. They are the oldest drug to the mankind. Historical findings goes back to Sumerians, which is nowadays Iraq, that they cultivated opium, poppy seed, and they extracted opium, they use opium for pleasure. Even Greek, Theophrastus, it is written, so the history goes back to 3rd century before Christ. Arab physicians were using these extracts of plant for various treatments also and for pleasure activities. And they are used for asthma, bad eyesight, diarrhea and as euphoriant. Narcotic terms, it comes from Greek, that is narcos, benum. Any substance which induces sleep is called narcotic. Any substance which act on opioid receptor, any illicit substance, impure substance. Legally, opium, opium derivatives and their semi-synthetic derivatives, they all are classified in this particular term, narcotic. And why this becomes important? Because when you read the various drug schedules by regulating authorities, these drugs are classified in a different schedule because these are the substance of abuse. If we go into the etymology portion, so opioids, where the naming system comes. So opioids, from Greek opos, that's it, juice. Opos means juice. Is any substance regardless of its origin or its structure that produce morphine-like effects. They are called, whether they are obtained from opium plant or synthetic or semi-synthetic, if they produce effect like opium, they all will be called opioids. And these effects can be blocked by their antagonist, that is naloxone. Then opiates. So all opiates are opioids. Clear? Opiates means the natural alkaloids which are derived from resins of the opium poppy plant. So they are opiates. Opiates means they are derived from that juice of poppy. And some authors also can include semi-synthetic substances derived directly from these alkaloids. Opium addiction goes back in the centuries. It's a lifestyle statement in 17th and 18th century. It was the source of an important social problem, one of the first public health concerns known as baby doping, giving a child, that means to keep a child sleep for a long time, these agents are used. So addiction history goes back. It was previously used for addiction, even nowadays it's a problem. Even its euphoriant actions, they are used for making a person euphoric before war. Even after wars, history of opium addiction increases. So the botanical name is Papaver somniferum. And opium is obtained from them, and there are more than 20 alkaloids in it, and that is morphine. It is discovered and named in 1806. Then codeine, papaverine. Opium is the dried juice of the seed head of the poppy. It was used in prehistorical times, like Egyptian times. Ebers Papyrus also writes about it as an analgesic, tranquilizer, antitussive drug, and for treating diarrhea. The photograph is showing the full plant and says poppy seeds. And you can see the cut, and this juice is obtained from this particular by giving incision to these. So the principal active ingredient in crude opium is morphine. It was isolated in 1806 by Frederick Saturner. He isolated the crystalline pure substance from opium that he named morphine after the Morpheus, the Greek god of dream, that is Geleucus. And Saturner tested the drug himself on and 3 of his men. A name is given by Geleucus. After the Morpheus. Who was Morpheus? Morpheus, the son of Somnus. Opium contains 2 group of alkaloids with phenanthrene structure, morphine, codeine, thebaine, with isocyanolene structure, Papaverine and noscapine. Morphine and codeine are narcotic analgesics. Papaverine is a vasodilator. Noscapine is an antitussive agent which is suspected of genotoxicity. And opium contains 10% of morphine. In 1950, Arnaud Beckett proposed that morphine-like compounds act by binding to specific receptors in the brain. If we again see the classification of opioid analgesics, it can be done by their origin, natural, synthetic, semi-synthetic. It can be done according to the receptor they act upon, mu, kappa, delta. It can also be done according to natural substances, semi-synthetic and synthetic substances. So strong opioid, even their potency is strong, mild to moderate and mild. Strong opioid agonists are morphine, fentanyl, meperidine, methadone. They are opioid agonists. And their derivative. Moderate ones are codeine, hydrocodone. Other dextromethorphan, diphenoxylate, loperamide, tramadol and tapentadol. So they are the milder ones. Then mixed opioid agonists as well as antagonists. They are buprenorphine, butorphanol, nalbuphine and pentazocine. So again, it is agonist, mixed agonist, antagonist, pure antagonist. Previous one was not showing the antagonist class. So for antagonist of these compounds, naloxone and naltrexone, they are the pure antagonist. Mixed ones are maybe antagonist at one subtype of receptor and agonist at another. They are buprenorphine, nalbuphine. Then stronger ones are morphine, methadone, meperidine. Moderate ones are codeine, oxycodone, and weak one, propoxyphene. So, some are non-opioid analgesic. We had already discussed. They are not used as analgesics, but they are non-opioid. Like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. They are non-narcotic analgesics. And other categories are which are not analgesics but can be used as analgesics in one particular situation. They are effective for those situations. Before going into the details of these agents, first let's see there is a system in the body. That is endogenous opioid system. And these agents are found within the brain that act through an opioid receptors and they called as an endogenous opioids. They are very important and they are discovered after discovery of morphine. So they are the principally three classes of agents: enkephalins, endorphins, dynorphins. All are peptides which are derived from various large precursor proteins like pre-opiomelanocortin, pre-pro-enkephalin, pre-pro-dynorphin. Then common amino terminal sequences like this, they are there in them. The distributions of various cells producing these three different types of endogenous opioids, they vary in their location and distribution. Like limited to arcuate nucleus and hippocampus in case of pre-pro-opiomelanocortin. In the areas of brain related to pain-producing pathway in case of pre-pro-enkephalin. They are having wider distribution pre-pro-dynorphins and endomorphins. They are newly discovered endogenous opioids with atypical structure and selectivity towards different receptors. Functions and of what are the functions of these endogenous opioids? First is modulation of pain perception. That means opioid analgesics, they not only relieve the pain, they also alter the reaction to pain. That means reaction to pain means that the modulation of pain perception. That means person can feel the pain, but its acute reaction or strong reactions, they subside. Modulation of motor activity for sustained periods. They also have these modulations, like motor activity can also be modulated, and they are also involved in various autonomic influences, regulation of various autonomic influences. Like people say, when I am tired, I go for a run. When you are tired, you want to take rest. But if you are tired and you go for a run and feel that I have more energy when I am done. Why this happens? That means exercises. Running is like exercises. The exercises stimulate release of endogenous opioid system, and which is useful in various ways. What are the types of opioid receptors? Mu, kappa and delta receptors are three opioid receptors. Previously, sigma receptors were also classified in this group, but they are totally different, and pentazocine is the drug which act on these sigma receptors, as well as ketamine, as well as some NMDA agonist. So they are basically, sigma receptor is a different origin receptor. So mu, kappa, delta, they are the primarily opioid receptors. They are from rhodopsin family of G protein coupled receptors. They are distributed through the brain and spinal cord, and they are also outside the central nervous system, like in vascular tissues, cardiac tissues, airway, lungs, gut, and cells of the immune system. Nowadays, in this COVID era, you must be listening, exercise well to increase your immune response. Don't forget, these endogenous opioid system, they are related with immunity also. International Union for Basic Pharmacology, they have named them MOP, KOP, DOP. For mu receptor, MOP, for kappa receptor, COP, and for delta receptor, DOP. Opioid receptors like protein, some are opioid-like substances or receptors are there, like ORL1 or NOP, with an endogenous ligand which is called nociceptin or orphanin, that is F/Q. This is this is also one of the opioid receptors. So this diagram is showing the presence of opioid receptors like this in the presynaptic membrane, mu receptors. These are the primary efferent fibers. How they modulate the release of various substances. This is the channel for calcium entry, and this is channel for potassium exit. That means they act by either inhibiting calcium entry or potentiating potassium efflux, that is hyperpolarization. These are the various neurotransmitters, glutamate and neuropeptides. You can also see that they are also in postsynaptic membrane also with other receptors. And here is the NK1 receptor also. So let's move to the pharmacokinetic details of these drugs. In short, they are modestly absorbed through gastrointestinal tract. They can be absorbed through oral route also, rectal route also, depends on their lipophilicity. They have high first pass metabolism. We will discuss the whole pharmacological action, therapeutic uses of these agents and ADR, adverse drug reaction, contraindication with the prototype morphine. So basically the prototype drug we take is morphine. So morphine has high first pass metabolism. It is more or less than 25% equal to or less than bioavailable by oral route. That means it has high first pass metabolism. Codeine and oxycodone, they are also having low first pass metabolism. But they are well absorbed through subcutaneous and intramuscular routes. Nasal insufflation, nasally they can also be inhaled, and they are having, by this route the blood levels are very high. Distribution, 1/3 of morphine is plasma protein bound. They achieve high concentration in highly perfused tissues like brain, liver, kidneys and spleen. In chronic administration, this type of built-up accumulation can take place, and opioids are found in plasma long after their doses has been stopped, because they are highly lipid soluble, their high concentration is there, so they can be found in blood for longer time, even their stoppage of therapy. In metabolism, liver, morphine 6-glucuronide and morphine 3-glucuronide. Morphine is metabolized in liver. They've been formed and they have significant activity of themselves. Morphine 6-glucuronide and morphine 3-glucuronide. Like you must be remembering, these glucuronides, that means it's a conjugating reaction and they are having significant enterohepatic circulation. That is, so they can interfere with the enzyme induction inhibition, like CYP3A4 and CYP2D6 are involved in biotransformation of morphine congeners like heroin, codeine, fentanyl. They are excreted by kidney. Morphine 6-glucuronide, morphine 3-glucuronide are excreted by glomerular filtration, and chronic renal failure can cause elevated levels of these metabolites and can lead to adverse effects like seizures and CNS depression. So now, after pharmacokinetic, we will start with pharmacodynamic actions of or pharmacological actions of opioid compounds, specifically morphine. So first we start with central nervous system effects. When they are given to patients in pain, their CNS effects are less intense. They can be tolerable. They feel more comfortable because their distress is relieved. But when given to normal individuals or patients who are not having any pain, their actions are unpleasant with drowsiness, difficulty in mentation, physical activity is lessened, and the sense of apathy is there. This diagram shows the pathway how tissue injury like burn, abrasion, joint inflammation and musculoskeletal injury, these impulses travels. Like you can see that whenever the injury occurs, there is release of various types of mediator, bradykinin, kinins, prostaglandins, and these are the sensory nerves, and they will be stimulated by these. So there will be, if a stimulus is persistent or high, so persistent activation will lead to sensitization of fibers, that is A delta or C, and there will be activity in ascending pathways plus spinal facilitation. That means these impulses are modulated in the spinal cord. There is various great theories how these impulses are modulated or facilitated in the spinal cord. If the intensity is high, then these impulses will be travel into the higher order neurons. So exaggerated output for given stimulant input, that means there occurs the magnification, and ongoing pain and hyperalgesia, it is felt. When there is nerve injury, so like here, whenever there is nerve injury, like here there is presence of neuroma. Here will be spinal sensitization of this. What happens? Nerve injury, then there will be stimulation of peripheral nerve degeneration or neuroma is there, and there will be spontaneous afferent activity, and there is spinal sensitization, and spontaneous dysthesias means shooting and burning pain like in neuralgias, or even A beta afferent fibers gets activated, where there is one phenomena that is known as allodynia. That means even the stimulus which is not painful, it hurts, and this condition is called allodynia. So there could be spontaneous dysthesias, or there are decreased threshold for pain perception. Next is the supraspinal actions. After spinal cord, what happens? So there is a diagram showing periaqueductal gray area, and here you can see there are GABAergic neurons which are active, and there are sending impulses to medulla oblongata. And here these are the medullobetal neurons, and these are GABAergic neurons, and here the opioid activation which causes inhibition of GABA release from this end. So there is in red it is MOR, mu receptor activation, which inhibited opioid release. Which inhibits GABA release. Next is another mechanism or another pathway which is the spinal opiate action. You can see here the second order neuron. So how it comes? This is periaqueductal gray, this is dorsal raphe, and here comes the locus coeruleus, then medulla, then comes the spinal cord, and here there will be mu receptors and there will be morphine action. So this is spinal opioid action. So peripheral mechanism of analgesia they are the basic tenet of opiate pharmacology has been that these drugs act centrally. But recently, in conditions of inflammation, it has been found that opioids act directly even on the peripheral terminal of small primary efferents. So it's not like that all the actions of opioid is because of supraspinal actions. There are evidences that some actions they are also having direct action on primary efferent cells. They are also involved in mood alteration and rewarding properties pathway. which are present in mesocorticolimbic and dopamine system. Like this is the vertical cross section. It is showing hippocampus, then prefrontal cortex, nucleus accumbens. This is the location of amygdala and this is ventral tegmental area. Opioids increase dopamine levels, dopamine release in nucleus accumbens. Here the dopamine release is increased by them. So mood alteration and rewarding properties. Which are the neurotransmitters involved? It is the prefrontal cortex. Here the glutamine receptors are there. Then GABA receptors are there. Noradrenaline. Then it is morphine receptor. Mu opioids are acting on these locations. All the locations. Ventral tegmental area. Here the dopamine release. So they modulate in this particular site. And by this they are having role in reward properties. Other CNS action, next, first is analgesia and second is respiration. So respiratory depression is the major limitation of opioid use. So you can remember this by correlating this pharmacological action of opioids on respiration by their major adverse effect. So respiratory depression, it is the primary cause of morbidity whenever the opioids are used, the secondary to them. All phases of respiratory activity, that is rate, minute volume, tidal exchange, aperiodic and irregular breathings are there. All phases will be affected. First, because of direct depression of rhythm generation in ventrolateral medulla. So there is one direct action with depression of rhythm generation in ventrolateral medulla, and second is depression. Second effect is because of desensitization of brain stem chemoreceptors, which normally respond to increasing plasma carbon dioxide level. So first it will, that you can assume or you can imagine how this happens. One is the direct action by depression of center. Another is the decreasing the sensitivity of chemoreceptors towards increasing levels of plasma carbon dioxide. That means if something happens to a respiration, there will be increase in carbon dioxide response or carbon dioxide level in the blood. And this is the protective mechanism that these chemoreceptors sense this increase in carbon dioxide and they respond to correct the whatever the abnormality occurs in the respiratory. But opioids, they also decrease this sensitivity. That means there are dual action is there. So these increase in CO2 will not be responded as normally. So there will be further depression of respiration. They also desensitize carotid and aortic chemosensors, which usually responds to hypoxia. Next is effect on cuff. So they have direct inhibitory effect on the cuff centers of medulla. Without loss, they don't have any loss of glottis protective activity, but they suppress cuff centers. There is no relation between the suppression of cuff and respiratory depression. They are totally through the different centers. Centrally acting antitussives like dextromethorphan, codeine and folcodeine. That means the opioids which are having mild abusive property or less mild actions, they can be used as cuff suppressant like dextromethorphan, codeine and folcodeine. Another prominent effect is on nausea and emesis. They directly stimulate chemoreceptor trigger zone. A vestibular component is also involved in this. So like apomorphine. It's a congener. A congener of morphine is highly emetic but has no action on opioid receptors. That means this effect of opioid analgesics is because of stimulation of chemoreceptor triggered zone. But apomorphine has no effect on other opioid receptors. Then the 5-HT3 receptor antagonists, they are used. 5-HT3 receptor antagonists like ondansetron, granisetron, they are used for opioid-induced to control opioid-induced nausea and vomiting. Another is seizures and convulsions. Some opioids at a slightly higher doses can produce epileptogenic activity. Like one of the agent is meperidine. It can cause frank seizures and myoclonus. Yes, several mechanisms could be responsible for this action, like inhibition of inhibitory interneurons, direct stimulatory effect, actions mediated by non-opioid receptors by their metabolites. Other actions which are through CNS, like temperature regulation. They can cause slight fall in body temperature. But in withdrawal, whenever there is withdrawal rate towards opioids, there the temperature could rise. Then meiosis, constriction of pupil. This is parasympathetic pathways. How it occurs? It occurs because of inhibition of GABAergic transmission. And this action, meiosis, it is very difficult it is late to occur. Like tolerance to meiosis is difficult to. We will see what is tolerance and what are the problematic things with opioids in our next lecture. Motor tone. High doses increase the muscle tone, chest wall rigidity and increase propensity to myoclonus. High doses. Peripheral effects like neuroendocrine. So first we have seen all the central nervous system effect. Now neuroendocrine effects. Like broadly, opioids block the release of many hormones from which are involved in hypothalamus pituitary axis. They are modulating their release or block. Like first, adrenal and sex steroid hormones. General decrease in the release of testosterone, dihydroepisterone, and cortisol, and also the gonadotrophins from the pituitary. They also have direct effect on pituitarides and also an indirect effect on hypothalamic neurons, decrease releasing hormones. That means they have effect on both hypothalamus and pituitary gland, and they decrease release of various hormones. Endocrinopathies, hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism, decreased libido, menstrual irregularity, effect on secondary sexual characteristic. They are the many things or diseases or conditions where they are also being involved. Prolactin, that is very important because there is an increased secretion of prolactin due to loss of inhibitory control of dopamine. They block dopamine and there will be increased release of prolactin. Then oxytocin and vasopressin. Kappa receptor agonists, they inhibit release of both oxytocin and vasopressin. Cardiovascular effects. So first, peripheral vasodilation is there, reduced peripheral vascular resistance and inhibition of baroreceptor reflexes, and that lead to orthostatic hypotension. They are also responsible for histamine release, which also induces vasodilation and hypotension, and blunting of reflex vasoconstriction because of in response to plasma carbon dioxide. So reflex vasoconstriction is also blunted. They are in what happens in coronary artery disease. They decrease by vasodilating action, they decrease preload, decrease inotropy, and chronotropic, means heart rate is increased, force of contraction is decreased, and there will be decrease in oxygen consumption in myocardium. And left ventricular and diastolic volume will also decrease and cardiac work. And these actions of these compounds are explanation for why they are being used in acute myocardial infarction, acute left ventricular failure. So the protective effect is mainly mediated by increase in the centrally mediated vagal outflow. They can aggravate hypovolemic shock because of their hypotensive action. They can cause respiratory depression, even carbon dioxide retention. Cerebrovasodilatation can be there. Increase in intracranial tension could be there because of these action and can be in high dose. They could be arrhythmogenic. Effect on gastrointestinal tract. Opioid receptors, they are having a very dense distribution in enteric plexus. In stomach, they cause delay in gastric emptying. They also decrease secretion of hydrochloric acid. In intestine, they diminish propulsive activity in both small intestine and large intestine. Intestinal secretions are reduced because of inhibitory effect on secretomotor neurons. So with this, we end this part 1 of pain perception, introduction to pain, pain types, pain mechanism, and opioid analgesics, part 1. Tomorrow we will be continuing with part 2 of opioid analgesic. Thanks a lot.